Manifestation isn't what you think it is, or what we're inundated with about manifestation is that if you align with the frequency of a certain thing that you want, a desire that you want, that you will lift yourself up into a reality that matches that frequency. That sounds really compelling and easy and simple. Of course, in action, it's not simple, and no one who's teaching these things says that it's actually super easy unless they're preaching the ease of that pursuit and that's their shtick around it. But it's hard for a lot of people. That's the reality of being a human being. If it was so easy to wish and dream and higher frequency ourselves into a different reality, we would all be living in paradise. The the concept of it being easy is a carrot that some meditation teachers hang over our heads. In reality, there could be a truth to this idea of things working on frequency, things working on desire, matching energy. Anyone who has experienced a spiritual awakening of some kind, and many awakenings happen, it's not one specialized sort of experience that happens, but anyone who comes to understanding, comes to awakening, can see things they didn't see before. A spiritual awakening could be sort of like a subconscious realization, a stripping away of layers. Anyone who's experienced that can sometimes understand that manifestation is possible, that you can create realities that didn't exist before. And there's so many different methods that people talk about: heart-mind resonance, surrender, there's emotional processing, breath work. There's all these things that people do to heal, quote unquote, to come into alignment with energy and frequency that can bring manifestations into your life. But that whole world is sticky and feels so harmful because it's so self-interested, and there's so much spiritual bypassing of material reality, mainly that you cannot wish yourself out of a genocide. The intensity of the systemic evil that we're all experiencing and seeing in front of our eyes is a reality that doesn't seem to connect with the spiritual bypassing language of somebody who says, oh, it's interesting that Trump gets everything he wants. Like, we should manifest just like Trump. He's delusional. Let's be delusional. But delusion isn't what's going to lead us to liberation. I understand the goal of that kind of thinking, but inevitably that kind of thinking takes us away from our human experience. It jumps over the human experience of witnessing each other in our pain, and working with spirit in concert with materiality to produce a future that is connected, that is spiritually aligned for the collective. So when people talk about manifestation and believing in that car and believing in that energy, there is some value in that I'll talk about in other videos, that there's value in the exercise of understanding your energy, your impact on your environment, and creating something that didn't exist before. Neuroscience will say that manifestation can be real, or neuroscience speakers that I've heard, that I've learned from on TikTok or YouTube or other reading parts of their books, not their whole books, they say that neuroscience explains manifestation in that when we are accustomed to and acquainting ourselves with a sense of reality that doesn't exist yet, when we are believing that that can exist, we start looking for the opportunities that lead us to that reality. And that is another form of manifestation. And that's a scientific way to explain it, but it doesn't explain why, when we are deeply obsessed with cardinals as a sign, that cardinals will suddenly start appearing everywhere we look. When the symbol of a phoenix is kind of very present in our consciousness, suddenly we drive by a garbage can in downtown Oakland and there's a phoenix on it. Or you have a dream and a dream and a phoenix arises in that dream. Or you open a notebook in a store and suddenly there's a phoenix inside of that Like, it doesn't explain why those kinds of strange synchronicities happen. But what people are getting, I would say, wrong energetically is how they're interpreting the language and knowledge around manifestation. It becomes so short term. That part of the journey, that awareness building around being able to control parts of your reality, does not mean that you are the ultimate creator of your reality. That is an incredibly offensive and harmful and spiritual bypassing way to talk about spiritual practice. And I have had a very hard time coming into understanding about why it's possible to manifest for the self. Do we have to be selfish and manifest just for the vision of our future that we want, the peaceful vision that doesn't have us participating in the human muck? The people who say, don't let bad frequencies into your life and be on a higher vibration than that. That's not the reality that a big part of the world lives in right now. There's a lot of evil happening. There's state control, there's war, there's genocide. These are realities that we can't wish ourselves out of. However, what if we use the spiritual lessons of, yes, being able to have an impact in our reality, and collectively decided that we wanted to use that spiritual progress to help uplift individuals and groups and communities out of horrible situations? Not as in, let's pray ourselves out of genocide, but what if we learned to work in ritual and spirit and community and formed our communities around this need to protect each other, protect the most vulnerable, to create justice in our systems? What if we use spirituality and what we're learning about consciousness as a means to guide us forward, not towards individualism and climbing the hierarchy of capitalism, but to undo capitalism, to understand how abundance truly works? Abundance and manifestation will meet us when we are in that selfish exploration. It will meet people. Some people will say that it doesn't matter, it doesn't care about morality or ethics. But the reality is, spirit and consciousness and the energy of good is present. There is an arc toward justice. There is a reality, I think, that is greater than the reality of darkness. Just because evil can hoard resources, and I'm using the word evil not to kind of like bring up images and feelings of conspiracy, but to really truly look at what's happening in this universe right now. There are people who are gaining power because they are using manifestation in the way that some of the more popular teachers around manifestation, they've taken those teachings and then completely ran with it into a darkness around power and creation and spirituality, and used it against humanity rather than becoming and changing with other human beings. There is a purpose for the popularization of understanding messages like following your excitement, or getting your heart and your mind in coherence, or matching a certain frequency. There's value in that and learning that. But those folks didn't take the message farther than self-interest and deepening understanding about power. And that's why we have such an opportunity now around manifestation. We have an opportunity to take what folks have learned and create actual change in our systems.